It is Sunday, September 4th, 2022, and we're live. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We're broadcasting, normally on Sundays, we broadcast on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF, but because it's the holiday weekend, Labor Day weekend, the radio station is shut down. So I'm still broadcasting. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. You all should be able to hear me okay. Testing 1 2 3. I was getting feedback for some reason for a minute. Hold on, let me see. I think okay. We had that open in all right. Okay. All right. You should be able to hear me all right. Okay, welcome to the African History Network show. It is Sunday, September 4th, 2022, and we are live. Normally on Sundays, we broadcast on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF, but because of the Labor Day weekend, the radio station is shut down. But I said I was going to broadcast anyway because I already had some content prepared. So I said I'm broadcasting anyway. Okay, so share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in as well. Hopefully the audio is good. Okay, so this past week was a very busy week. We saw that on Thursday, President Joe Biden delivered a blistering speech attacking MAGA Republicans. Biden attacks Trump and MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy and blistering speech. We're going to share an excerpt of that speech with you as well. And then, so that was on Thursday. And then also civil leaders of major civil rights organizations met with President Joe Biden on Friday. And they are civil rights leaders warned of threat from white supremacy. They've called a state of emergency as well. Civil rights leaders warned about the dangers. Civil rights leaders warned about the dangers white supremacy poses to the U.S. following a meeting with President Joe Biden. Now, this was a meeting that was already scheduled to take place. It just so happened that it took place right after the day after President Joe Biden gives this blistering speech, calling out the MAGA Republicans, calling out the election deniers, calling out the coup plotters, etc., and rightfully so. Rightfully so. So many people are applauding the speech. You have some people running around like a hit dog hollering, complaining about Joe Biden's speech. Civil rights leaders warn of threat from white supremacy. We're going to share an excerpt of that press conference that they held right after a meeting with President Joe Biden on Friday. That was Friday, September 2nd. Civil rights leaders warned about the dangers white supremacy poses the U.S. following a meeting with President Joe Biden. And this was an article originally from Bloomberg. White supremacy activity is danger to our democracy. Derek Johnson said, president of the NAACP, CEO and president of the NAACP. He said at the White House, after the meeting at the White House on Friday, he says, so as we stand here as civil rights leaders, we are aligned with this administration to protect democracy. So we'll discuss this as well. And then also we'll update on what's going on in Mississippi with the water crisis in Mississippi. Now, FEMA is down there. President Joe Biden declared the state of emergency for Mississippi as well. So Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi specifically, they're getting federal help now also. So they're making some progress. Things are not where they should be, but they are making some progress. There was a press conference that Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba held on Wednesday. So we'll share an excerpt of that. There was a press conference he held on Wednesday. We'll share an excerpt of that press conference also. And Wednesday, I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Okay, Wednesday, August 31st. Normally I'm on Friday, but we didn't have a show Friday because of the Labor Day weekend. And they called me and asked me if I could come on Wednesday. So we discussed this on Wednesday also. So we'll give you an update there, what's happening with the Mississippi water crisis and Jackson, Mississippi water crisis. And, you know, I talked about this last Sunday, and we dealt with the Mississippi felony disenfranchisement law. And we dealt with the racism going on in Mississippi and the history of the racism in Mississippi. And this is much deeper than many people thought. This deals with about 30 years of neglect when it comes to Mississippi, about 30 years of neglect coming from the state legislature, coming from the governor of Mississippi also. But another thing that I posted this article here that came out in the past couple of days. And this deals with Mississippi and student loan forgiveness. Mississippi and student loan forgiveness, okay? And this is a shocking story. So after President Joe Biden made this announcement on August 24th of student loan forgiveness of $10,000 to $20,000, and for 20 million borrowers is going to wipe out the remainder of their student loan balance. This article here from this Mississippi publication, WLOX, August 31st, Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. Mississippi confirms it will tax forgiven student loan debt. Mississippi confirms it will tax forgiven student loan debt. This is channel 13, WLOX in Mississippi. We'll talk about this as well. And there's some other articles we'll discuss as well dealing with Mississippi, because Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country, and the American Rescue Plan waived the American Rescue Plan made the student loan forgiveness tax exempt. Okay, but the state of Mississippi is still going to tax these people for having their student loans forgiven. Okay, it's just backwards. All right, so we'll discuss that, and then also in another Mississippi story, you may have heard about this, and I posted some information on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, dealing with this as well. So Governor Tate Reeves is the Republican governor of Mississippi. In August, he sent back $100 million in rental assistance that came from the federal government to help poor people stay in their homes in Mississippi. You know, so the American Rescue Plan had $46.5 billion of rental assistance, of funding for rental assistance, and for landlords to be able to pay the banks, so the landlords could stay current on the mortgages on their property, and also renters could get federal funding to pay their rent and stay in their homes. Governor Tate Reeves, the Republican governor of Mississippi, just sent back $100 million in unused rental assistance. And he called it a socialist experimental program. Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country. And this fool sent back $100 million in funding to help poor people and people who need it stay in their homes. This is why elections have consequences. This is why people like Governor Tate Reeves, the Republicans in the state legislature of Mississippi, this is an example of why they have to be voted out of office. Having stupid people in office could be deadly. Having stupid people in office could be deadly. Okay, so we'll discuss that. We'll talk about the civil rights leaders declaring the state of emergency as well, in the meeting they had with President Joe Biden on Friday. And no, this is not their first meeting with President Joe Biden. This is, I think, the third. They've already met with him while he's been president. This is not their first meeting. Okay. Somebody on Roland's Facebook page said, oh, this was their first meeting. It's like, you don't even follow politics, man. You should do a Google search or something before you start speaking. So we'll discuss that. And then also, I posted about this as well on our Facebook page. So we know Republicans are upset about President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness and the fact that a little more than 1 in 4 African Americans are going to have their loans forgiven. You're going to have about 50% of African Americans will have half their debt wiped out. And then also 500,000 African American families will go from a negative net worth to a positive net worth. Well, I don't know if you saw this story, but you have Republicans who are getting ready to file a lawsuit to block President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program. GOP attorneys general, state attorney generals, top lawmakers, and conservative groups are discussing legal options, alleging the White House's move to cancel student debt is illegal. Now, Republicans basically aren't doing anything to cancel student debt, to help borrowers, anything like that. Republican state attorneys general and other leading conservatives are exploring a slew of potential lawsuits targeting President Joe Biden's plan to cancel some student debt, challenges that could limit or invalidate the policy before it takes full effect. And you have people running around talking about not voting. Just stupid. This is pure evil. This is pure evil right here. Okay. All right. So we'll discuss that. Also, we have a new online class starting up on Thursday, September 8th, 7 p.m. East Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is going to be an 8-week online class. We got some new content in the class also, and we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place as well. So this class, we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime, even after a year or two after the class is over with. You can still go back and watch it. This will be 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Class number 1 starts Thursday, September 8th. Class is on sale $80, regularly $130. So you can register for it right now. As soon as you register, this bonus content, you can start watching. And we also have a bundle pack where you register for both classes for $130. That's an over $300 value. If you've taken any of my online classes in the past, you get a 50% discount. So email us, you get a 50% discount. Okay. And then the second class is from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. That class is going to start up Tuesday, September 13th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. So we'll deal with that and those other topics also. And we give you an overview. We'll give you a preview of my new online course also. All right. Now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions. because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our new website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com as well. Okay, let's jump into this first story here. And I mean, there's been so much talk about it, so many articles about it, so many news stories about it, dealing with President Joe Biden calling out the MAGA Republicans. President Joe Biden calling out the MAGA Republicans. So there's a good piece from the Washington Post that I read. Also, a good article from NBC News. Okay, if we go to let's go to the piece from NBC News first. Let me pull this up here. Biden attacks Trump, MAGA Republicans as threat to democracy in blistering speech. And yes, they are a threat to democracy. He's not talking about regular mainstream Republicans. He's talking about the coup plotters. He's talking about the election deniers, the people pushing conspiracy theories. All that stuff is very dangerous. Okay, that's what he's talking about. Okay, so if we look at this article here from NBC News, then we're going to go to some of the actual footage. We'll go to some of the actual, some of Biden's actual speech. Okay, Biden attacks Trump, MAGA Republicans as threat to democracy in blistering speech. Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. Biden said in remarks in Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia, we know, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was the U.S. capital before Washington, D.C. Became the capital. So it was very symbolic that he held his speech there in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, now President Joe Biden accused former President Donald Trump and his supporters, or some of his supporters, of promoting an extreme ideology that threatens democracy in a rare primetime speech, in rare primetime remarks Thursday, as he stepped up attacks on conservatives ahead of the midterm elections. Well, these were some conservatives. He talked about working with Republicans, but he's talking about these extreme MAGA Republicans promoting conspiracy theories, pushing violence, inciting violence. Quote, too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Biden said in the speech from the Independence National Historical Park in Philadelphia. He said, let me scroll down this. He said he accused so-called MAGA Republicans, a reference to Trump's Make America Great Again slogan. He accused them of refusing to recognize free and fair elections, increasingly talking about violence in response to actions they don't like, and of being determined to thwart the will of the people, and in being determined to thwart the will of the people. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live in the light of truth, but in the shadow. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. Now, ahead of the remarks, senior administration official insisted that it was not a speech about a particular politician or even a particular political party. Biden said he did not believe the ideology he was referring to represented that of most Republicans, although it has been embraced by a number of elected officials. Biden said not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know because I have been able to work with these mainstream Republicans, Biden said. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. And that is a threat to this country. Okay. And he's absolutely correct. Now, I've seen one poll that shows it's about between 25 to 29% of Republicans that are not MAGA Republicans that don't follow Donald Trump like that. And Biden is trying to appeal to that 25 to 29%. Okay. And I think he can. And especially when you compare the policies of Republicans against those of Democrats and what Democrats have been able to accomplish. You have some Republicans who don't want Biden, who don't want Trump, who are not espousing the conspiracy theories, things like this. They're like, they operate based upon reality. But that's not the majority of the Republican Party. Okay, that's not the majority of the Republican Party. The majority of the Republican Party has been co-opted and poisoned by Trump. All right, I want to go to the press conference that took the speech that Biden gave. Let's go to this speech here.
This is where America made its Declaration of Independence to the world more than 2 centuries ago with an idea unique among nations, that in America we're all created equal. This is where the United States Constitution was written and debated. This is where we set in motion the most extraordinary experiment of self-government the world has ever known. With 3 simple words: we the people, we the people. These 2 documents and the ideas they embody, equality and democracy, are the rock upon which this nation is built. They're how we became the greatest nation on earth. They're why, for more than 2 centuries, America has been a beacon to the world. But as I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault. We do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise. So tonight, I've come to this place again to speak as plainly as I can to the nation about the threats we face, about the power we have in our own hands to meet these threats, and about the incredible future that lies in front of us if only we choose it. We must never forget, we the people are the true heirs of the American experiment that began more than 2 centuries ago. We the people have burning inside of each of us the flame of liberty that was lit here at Independence Hall. A flame that lit our way through abolition, the Civil War, suffrage, the Great Depression, world wars, civil rights. That sacred flame still burns. Now in our time, as we build an America that is more prosperous, free and just. That is the work of my presidency, a mission I believe in with my whole soul. But first, we must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. These are hard things, but I'm an American president, not a president of red America or blue America, but of all America. And I believe it's my duty to level with you, to tell the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now, as I speak, in state after state, to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country. They look at the mob that stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th, brutally attacking law enforcement, not as insurrectionists who placed a dagger at the throat of our democracy, but they look at them as patriots. And they see their MAGA failure to stop a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 election as preparation for the 2022 and 2024 elections. They tried everything last time to nullify the votes of 81 million people. This time, they're determined to succeed in thwarting the will of the people. That's why respected conservatives like Federal Circuit Court Judge Michael Imhotep has called Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans, quote, a clear and present danger to our democracy. But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats. We are not bystanders in this ongoing attack on democracy. There are far more Americans from every background and belief who reject the extreme MAGA ideology than those that accept it. And folks, it's within our power, it's in our hands, yours and mine, to stop the assault on American democracy. I believe America is at an inflection point, one of those moments that determine the shape of everything that's to come after. And now, America must choose to move forward or to move backwards, to build a future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of hope and unity and optimism, or a nation of fear, division, and of darkness. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. But together we can choose a different path. We can choose a better path forward to the future. A future of possibility, a future to build and dream and hope. And we're on that path moving ahead. I know this nation. I know you, the American people. I know your courage. I know your hearts, and I know our history. This is a nation that honors our Constitution. We do not reject it. This is a nation that believes in the rule of law. We do not repudiate it. This is a nation that respects free and fair elections. We honor the will of the people. We do not deny it. And this is a nation that rejects violence as a political tool. We do not encourage violence. We are still an America that believes in honesty and decency and respect for others. Patriotism, liberty, justice for all, hope, possibilities. We are still, at our core, a democracy. And yet, history tells us that blind loyalty to a single leader and a willingness to engage in political violence is fatal to democracy. For a long time, we've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it, each and every one of us. That's why tonight I'm asking our nation to come together, unite behind a single purpose of defending our democracy regardless of your ideology. We're all called by duty and conscience to confront extremists who put their own pursuit of power above all else. Democrats, independents, mainstream Republicans, we must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. We, the people, will not let anyone or anything tear us apart. Today, there are dangers around us. We cannot allow to fail. We here, you've heard it, more and more talk about violence as an acceptable political tool in this country. It's not. It can never be an acceptable tool. So I want to say this plain and simple. There is no place for political violence in America, period. None, ever. We saw law enforcement brutally attacked on January the 6th. We've seen election officials, poll workers, many of them volunteers of both parties, subject to intimidation and death threats. And can you believe it? FBI agents, just doing their job as directed, facing threats to their own lives from their own fellow citizens. On top of that, there are public figures today, yesterday, and the day before predicting and all but calling for mass violence and rioting in the streets. This is inflammatory. It's dangerous. It's against the rule of law. And we, the people, must say, this is not who we are. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't be pro-insurrectionist and pro-American. They're incompatible. We can't allow violence to be normalized in this country. It's wrong. We each have to reject political violence with all the moral clarity this nation can muster. Now, we can't let the integrity of our elections be undermined, for that is a path to chaos. Look, I know politics can be fierce and mean and nasty in America. I get it. I believe in the give and take of politics, in disagreement and debate and dissent. We're a big, complicated country. But democracy endures only if we, the people, respect the guardrails of the Republic. Only if we, the people, accept the results of free and fair elections. Only if we, the people, see politics not as total war, but mediation of our differences. Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. And that's where the MAGA Republicans are today. They don't understand what every patriotic American knows. You can't love your country only when you win. It's fundamental. American democracy only works only if we choose to respect the rule of law and the institutions that were set up in this chamber behind me. Only if we respect our legitimate political differences. I will not stand by and watch. I will not the will of the American people be overturned by wild conspiracy theories and baseless evidence-free claims of fraud. I will not stand by and watch elections in this country stolen by people who simply refuse to accept that they lost. I will not stand by and watch the most fundamental freedom in this country, the freedom to vote, and have your vote counted and be taken from you and the American people. Look, as your president, I will defend our democracy with every fiber of my being, and I'm asking every American to join me. Throughout our history, America's often made the greatest progress coming out of some of our darkest moments, like you're hearing to that bullhorn. I believe we can and must do that again. And we are. MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies. Lies told for profit and power. But I see a different America. An America with an unlimited future. An America that's about to take off. I hope you see it as well. Just look around. I believe we could lift America from the depths of COVID. So we passed the largest economic recovery package since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and today America's economy is faster, stronger than any other advanced nation in the world. We have more to go. I believe we could build a better America. So we passed the biggest infrastructure investment since President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and we've now embarked on a decade of rebuilding the nation's roads, bridges, highways, ports, water systems, high-speed internet, railroads. I believe we could make America safer, so we passed the most significant gun safety law since President Clinton. I believe we could go from being the highest cost of prescriptions in the world to making prescription drugs and health care more affordable. So we passed the most significant health care reform since President Obama signed the Affordable Care Act. And I believe we could create a clean energy future and save the planet. So we passed the most important climate initiative ever, ever, ever. The cynics and the critics tell us nothing can get done, but they're wrong. There is not a single thing America cannot do, not a single thing beyond our capacity if we do it together. It's never easy, but we're proving in America, no matter how long the road, progress does come. Look, I know the last few years have been tough, but today, COVID no longer controls our lives. More Americans are working than ever. Businesses are growing. Our schools are open. Millions of Americans have been lifted out of poverty. Millions of veterans once exposed to toxic burn pits will now get what they deserve for their families and the compensation. American manufacturing has come alive across the heartland, and the future will be made in America. No matter what the white supremacists and the extremists say, I made a bet on you, the American people, and that bet is paying off, proving that from darkness, the darkness of Charlottesville, of COVID, of gun violence, of insurrection, we can see the light. Light is now visible. Light that will guide us forward, not only in words, but in actions. Actions for you, for your children, for your grandchildren, for America. Even in this moment, with all the challenges we face, I give you my word as a Biden, I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Not because of me, but because of who you are. We're going to end cancer as we know it. Mark my words. We're going to create millions of new jobs in a clean energy economy. We're going to think big. We're going to make the 21st century another American century because the world needs us to. That's where we need to focus our energy. Not in the past, not on divisive culture wars, not on the politics of grievance, but on a future we can build together. The MAGA Republicans believe that for them to succeed, everyone else has to fail. They believe America is not like I believe about America. I believe America is big enough for all of us to succeed. And that is the nation we're building, a nation where no one is left behind. I ran for president because I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. I still believe that to be true. I believe the soul is the breath, the life, and the essence of who we are. The soul is what makes us, us. The soul of America is defined by the sacred proposition that all are created equal in the image of God, that all are entitled to be treated with decency, dignity, and respect, that all deserve justice and a shot at lives of prosperity and consequence, and that democracy must be defended, for democracy makes all these things possible. Folks, and it's up to us. Democracy begins and will be preserved in we, the people's habits of the heart, in our character, optimism that is tested yet endures, courage that digs deep when we need it, empathy that fuels democracy, the willingness to see each other not as enemies but as fellow Americans. Look, our democracy isn't perfect. It always has been. Notwithstanding those folks you hear on the other side there. They're entitled to be outrageous. This is a democracy. But history and common sense good manners is nothing they've ever suffered from. But history and common sense tell us that opportunity, liberty, and justice for all are most likely to come to pass in a democracy. We have never fully realized the aspirations of our founding, but every generation has opened those doors a little bit wider to include more people who have been excluded before. My fellow Americans, America is an idea, the most powerful idea in the history of the world, and it beats in the hearts of the people of this country. It beats in all our hearts. It unites America. It is the American creed, the idea that America guarantees that everyone be treated with dignity. It gives hate no safe harbor. It installs in everyone the belief that no matter where you start in life, there's nothing you can't achieve. That's who we are. That's what we stand for. That's what we believe. And that's precisely what we're doing. Opening doors, creating possibilities, focusing on the future. And we're only just beginning.
All right, I'm gonna pause it right there. You can watch the rest of that at whitehouse.gov. So Biden delivered a powerful speech. He called out the MAGA Republicans on Thursday. Now he clarified his statements on Friday because you had many Democrats who applauded his speech and said it was about time he called out the conspiracy theorists and the MAGA Republicans, things like this. You had some who said, okay, he needs to go farther. This is good. He needs to go farther. You had Republicans sounding like a hit dog hollering, and they were complaining and saying Biden was being divisive. Imagine that. They support the coup plotters and the conspiracy theorists and the election deniers. Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel, whose last name is Romney, but Biden doesn't like Mitt Romney. She's Mitt Romney's niece, if I remember correctly. Biden doesn't like, Trump does not like Mitt Romney. So Trump pressured Ronna McDaniel to drop the Romney from her name. This is how much of a cancer Donald Trump is. Okay. Now, if we look here at, if we go to, I want to go to this clip here. This deals with Biden's clarification on what he said to make it perfectly clear to everybody, because he wasn't talking about all Republicans, even though Trump was in Pennsylvania in the past couple of days delivering a speech, and a campaign speech, and he gave the impression that Biden was talking about the 74 million people that voted for Trump. That's not what Biden was talking about. He's talking about the MAGA Republicans. All right, now I want to go to this clip here. This is from CNN. Biden clarifies what he meant by MAGA Republicans. Let's go to this clip. All right, hold on. I'm trying to get past this. Okay, I got to get past this ad. Just stand by.
President Biden is clarifying who is targeting his speech. Months ago, the president saying he was not calling all Trump supporters a threat to democracy, just those who call for violence and attempt to overturn elections.
Anyone who calls for violence, theft, and violence, choose to acknowledge the election that has been won, insist on changing the way it's ruled, not vote. That is a threat to democracy. If you're voting for Donald Trump, for now, they weren't voting for Second Amendment. They weren't voting for election. They were voting for a philosophy.
Oh, so that's Biden clarifying what he said. Okay, close out these ads. That's Biden clarifying what he said for those that want to try to twist his words. Okay. All right, Jerome, thanks for your contribution through Cash App. We appreciate that also. You can support us through PayPal or Cash App if you'd like to stop for information. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. We also have the information on the homepage of our website, theAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. We definitely need your support because it's a lot that I have to take care of this week. Financially speaking, it's a lot I have to take care of this week. So this is our official Cash App account, $ the HN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it says Michael and shows my picture there. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts, and we have the link here. You click on the link, takes you to our barcode right here. You can scan it as well. All right. I want to go to very quickly. I want to go back to this article here from NBC News. Washington Post has a good article you can check out as well. But this is from NBC News. Then I want to go to the meeting that the civil rights leaders had with Biden on Friday. Okay. Because one of the leaders was interviewed by Alex Wagner on MSNBC, and I'm gonna share that interview with you. Okay, Biden attacks MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy in blistering speech. All right, now a NBC News poll. Let me scroll down to this here. An NBC News poll last month in August found that threats to democracy have overtaken the cost of living as the most important issue facing the country. That was a NBC News poll from August. Okay, and let's see here. Now, let's see. In the statement Thursday, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel Romney accused Biden and Democrats of pitting Americans against one another. Now, the official Republican position on the January 6, 2021 insurrection is that it was acceptable. I forgot how they phrased it, but it was acceptable political discourse. That's what they call storming the U.S. Capitol, assaulting over 140 police officers, storming the Capitol, trying to interrupt a constitutionally mandated bicameral session of Congress to certify electoral college results for a peaceful transference of power. They call that insurrection acceptable political discourse. Now, Biden likened the outlook of Republicans who have embraced the MAGA philosophy central to Trump's presidency to semi-fascism at a fundraiser for Democrats last week. Semi-fascism. I think that was when he was in Maryland. Okay, he was campaigning for Wes Moore, who's running for governor of Maryland. Okay, now, in remarks this week, also in Pennsylvania, Biden accused Republicans of not being supportive of law enforcement and the rule of law for their attacks on the FBI after it searched Trump's Florida estate at Mar-a-Lago, and they were carrying out a lawful search warrant that a federal judge signed off on. Now, the question is, why does Trump have he had over 300 classified documents at Mar-a-Lago? Why did he have them? And the National Archives has been trying to get those documents for a year from him. Why does he have the classified documents in the first place? And even if they were declassified, they still don't belong to him. They belong to the National Archives. They're not his documents. So why were they at Mar-a-Lago in the first place? He still hasn't answered that question. Okay, so check out this article here from NBC News. Biden attacks Trump, MAGA Republicans as a threat to democracy in blistering speech. And then also we have a good one from the Washington Post. Biden warns U.S. faces powerful threat from anti-democratic forces. Biden warns U.S. faces powerful threat from anti-democratic forces. Biden in primetime address says Trump and MAGA Republicans are mounting a dangerous attack on the country's values, and Americans must fight back. This is from September 1st, 2022, from the Washington Post. Now, this speech from Biden came after he met privately with a group of presidential historians in early August. Okay, now we've talked about this here on the show. This is why understanding history is so important. And Donald Trump does not understand history at all. Okay. This one right here, this article here, we've talked about this here. We talked about it last Sunday on the show. Historians privately warned Biden that America's democracy is teetering. When Biden met with historians last week at the White House, they compared the threat facing America to the pre-Civil War era and to pro-fascist movements before World War II. Now, Biden's speech was after he met with these presidential historians. Now, this article is from August 10th, 2022. Now, Biden has enough sense to meet with presidential historians. Okay, Trump didn't do that. Okay, he had the 1776 commission, but they put out some ahistorical nonsense on whitehouse.gov. They put out a report, and luckily Biden took that nonsense down and disbanded the 1776 commission. The 1776 commission was supposed to be the answer to the 1619 project, and Nicole Hannah Jones from the New York Times. That's what the 1776 commission was. Now, President Biden paused last week during one of the busiest stretches of his presidency for a nearly 2-hour private history lesson from a group of academics who raised alarms about the dire condition of democracy at home and abroad. The conversation during a ferocious lightning storm on August 4th, 2022, unfolded as sort of a Socratic dialogue between the commander-in-chief and a select group of scholars. Okay. Beschloss, John, I think is two of the presidential historians you see on MSNBC, Beschloss and also John Meacham. They were both here at this meeting. They painted the current moment as among the most perilous in modern history for democratic governance, according to multiple people familiar with the discussions who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe a private meeting. Comparisons were made to the years before the 1860 presidential election, when Abraham Lincoln warned that a house divided against itself cannot stand, and the lead up to the 1940 election, when President Roosevelt battled rising domestic sympathy for European fascism. President Roosevelt battled rising domestic sympathy for European fascism and resistance to the United States joining World War II. So this is 1940. This is during the Depression. Okay. The diversion was for Biden part of a regular effort to use outside experts in private White House meetings. The diversion was for Biden part of a regular effort to use outside experts in private White House meetings to help him work through his approach to multiple crises facing his presidency. Now, former President Bill Clinton spoke with Biden in May about how to navigate inflation in the midterm elections. A group of foreign policy experts, including former Republican advisors, came to the White House in January to brief Biden for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. These meetings have come as Biden faces the isolation that is endemic to presidency, a problem that some Democrats say has been worsened by the coronavirus pandemic, which restricted visitors through much of the first year of his presidency, and by the insular quality of Biden's inner circle, made up of staffers who have worked with him for decades. Okay, now, so read the rest of this article here. And it talks more about this meeting with presidential historians, the importance of the meeting and how it relates to what's going on right now. Okay, check out the rest of this piece here from NBC News. So the speech that Biden gave on Thursday, September 1st, was less than a month after he met with Biden met with these historians on August 4th. Okay, now let's look at. I want to go to this piece here from MSNBC, and I need to cue this clip up because on Friday, September 2nd, Biden met with leading civil rights leaders, okay, to talk about the rise of white supremacy, talk about different issues, especially pertaining to the African-American community as well. Bloomberg has this article picked up by Yahoo News. Civil rights leaders warn of threat from white supremacy. Civil rights leaders warn of threat from white supremacy. And they held a press conference outside of the White House after the meeting as well. Now, Roland Martin on Roland Martin Unfiltered and on his YouTube channel, Roland Martin and Facebook, Roland broadcasted the press conference, so you can watch it in its entirety there. I think it's about 20 minutes or so. I'm going to share an excerpt of it. I'm going to share an excerpt of it here because Damon Hewitt, executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law, was interviewed by Alex Wagner on MSNBC on Friday, September. He was on Friday, September 2nd. Okay, so we're going to go to that clip here in just a minute, and I'll let you hear some of the press conference. Okay, stand by. So if we look here quickly at this article, civil rights leaders warn of threat from white supremacy. Civil rights leaders warned about the dangers white supremacy poses to the U.S. following a meeting with President Joe Biden. This is an article originally from Bloomberg.com. White supremacy activity is a danger to our democracy. White supremacy activity is a danger to our democracy, said Derek Johnson, president and CEO and president of the NAACP. He said this after the White House meeting on Friday. He says, so as we stand here as civil rights leaders, we are aligned with this administration to protect democracy. Now, the meeting came a day after Biden accused Donald Trump and Republicans' primetime speech of stoking political extremism that threatens democracy in the U.S. Participants said they discussed a number of issues with Biden, including criminal justice reform, voting rights, support for African-American farmers, and the administration's efforts to secure release of Brittany Griner, the WNBA player sentenced in Russia on drug charges. The Biden administration has said Brittany Griner is wrongfully detained. Quote, we are happy we had the meeting day after he made such a passionate speech about democracy, said Reverend Al Sharpton, president of the National Action Network, adding that Black Americans have had a different experience of democracy than other Americans. Now, Reverend Al Sharpton said Biden was committed to prioritizing further action on voting rights if Democrats kept control of Congress in the November 2022 midterm elections. And Sharpton said leaders pushed Biden on doing more on criminal justice reform beyond his executive order on policing that he signed May 25th, 2020, after Republicans blocked the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in the Senate, because the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed the House of Representatives in March of 2021 by a vote of 220 to 212, and all the Republicans voted against the bill. No Republicans supported the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Okay, so remember that when you vote. And then Senator Tim Scott blocked it in the Senate, the Black Tea Party Republican from South Carolina. We discussed that more may be necessary. We're shooting for the law. Biden signed an executive order in May 25th, 2022, the second year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. This executive order directed federal law enforcement agencies to revise their policies on use of force, to limit tactics like no-knock warrants, chokeholds, and carotid artery restraints. The measure offers grants as an incentive to state and local police departments to adopt similar policies. Now, participants at the meeting also included Melanie Campbell, President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, and Mark Yao, President and CEO of the National Urban League. Biden last met in person with most of the civil rights leaders collectively in July of 2021. In that meeting, the leaders also pushed for criminal justice reform and voting rights legislation, but those ultimately stalled in Congress, casualties of Democrats' then majority. It was blocked by Republicans. No Republicans supported the bills. Even the the two voting rights bills, the Freedom to Vote Act, which was Joe Manchin's bill, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. No Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for those bills. Well, the Freedom to Vote Act did not make it to the House. That originated in the Senate. None of the 50 Republicans voted for that in the Senate. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed the House of Representatives in August of 2021 by a vote of 219 to 211. No Republicans voted for that bill in the House of Representatives. And then in the Senate, no Republicans voted for that bill, including the 16 sitting Republicans, who in 2006 voted to reauthorize the 1965 Voting Rights Act. 16 sitting Republicans: Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, from Iowa, Chuck Grassley, old ass Chuck Grassley, almost 100 years old, Chuck Grassley. Let me pull this up here. Let me show you this graphic. None of them voted for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, even though they talk about how great John Lewis was and they love John Lewis and all this stuff. Okay, they didn't vote to protect John Lewis's legacy, which is why when every last one of those traitorous Republicans are up for re-election, they need to be voted out of office. This right here: current Republican senators who voted to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act in 2006. You got Moscow Mitch McConnell. You got Chuck Grassley spreading conspiracy theories about the FBI. You've got Richard Shelby of Alabama, who, if I remember correctly, originally he was a Democrat, then he became a Republican, senator from Alabama. Susan Collins of Maine, who's always concerned and disturbed. Susan Collins of Maine. Richard Burr, North Carolina. John Inhofe, spineless Lindsey Graham. John Thune. John Cornyn of Texas. Marsha Blackburn, who looks like a poodle in some of her pictures when her hair is, not done. She looks like a poodle. Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. Roy Blunt of Missouri, if I remember correctly. John Boozman. Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. Shelley Moore Capito is the other Republicans, is the other senator from West Virginia. So we know Joe Manchin is the Democratic senator from West Virginia. The other senator from West Virginia is Shelley Moore Capito, who's a Republican. You have Jerry Moran, Roger Wicker of Mississippi, senator from Mississippi. Now, Roger Wicker voted for the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, and there's something like $449 million from the infrastructure bill that's going to Mississippi, not Jackson, Mississippi, the capital, but it's going to Mississippi in general. There's about 170 infrastructure projects that have been identified in Mississippi. Okay, and this funding from the infrastructure bill is going towards those projects. Now, the other senator from Mississippi is the public hanging woman, Cindy Hyde Smith. She voted against the infrastructure bill, even though Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country and has failing infrastructure and is in desperate need of infrastructure funding, in desperate need of high-speed internet in rural areas. Senator Roger Wicker, even though he voted against the Voting Rights Act, both Voting Rights Acts in 2022, at least he voted for the infrastructure bill. Cindy Hyde Smith, the other senator from Mississippi, voted against the infrastructure bill. Just stupid. So there was 19 Republicans who voted for the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. Okay. And then you have Senator Mike Crapo. So these are the 16 sitting Republicans in the Senate right now who in 2006 voted for the voted to reauthorize the 1965 Voting Rights Act and the protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. But in 2022, they voted against the voting rights bills. So this is an example of how elections have consequences. Okay, now let's go back to this right here. So you had leaders of civil rights organizations who met with Biden on Friday, the day after he gave this speech. Now, Biden has credited Black voters with let me back up here. Okay, Biden last met with civil rights leaders in July 2021. In that meeting, the leaders also pushed for criminal justice reform and voting rights legislation, but both efforts ultimately stalled in Congress. Casualties of Democrats thin majority, the 50-50 majority in the Senate. That's why you have to expand your majority in the House of Representatives and Democrats maintain control of the House and expand their majority in their slim majority in the Senate. Because then if you get to like 55 Democrats in the Senate, then you can nullify the votes of Manchin and Sinema, and you can do carve-outs to the filibuster or change the filibuster rules altogether. Now, Biden has credited Black voters with reviving his presidential primary campaign and sending him to the White House. 16.9 million African Americans voted for Biden in the general election, 9.7 million Latinos, 49 million white Americans. He has said that addressing systemic inequality is among his priorities for his presidency. Now, we know that on day one in January 20th, 2021, we know there were 10 executive orders that Biden signed, and Executive Order 13985 was one of those executive orders. Okay. I don't know how many people know this, but Executive Order 13985 was one of those executive orders, and it dealt with rooting out racial discrimination when it came to government policies. If we look at this article from April 14th, 2022, from thegrio.com, Biden-Harris administration unveils government-wide action plans on racial equality. This right here that I'm about to show you is the result of Executive Order 13985 that Biden signed on day one in office. Why more people are not talking about this, I really don't understand this. Maybe somebody can explain it to me. This is an article from thegrio.com. We were scheduled back in April when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered, one of those times I was on. We were scheduled to talk about it, and I mentioned it for a minute. We didn't have enough time to discuss it, but I've talked about it here on this show because this is extremely important. Okay, let's go to what is this doing? Okay. Biden-Harris administration unveils government-wide action plans on racial equality. So this is, okay, they pull up the one from Yahoo News, originally from thegrio.com. And this is from April 14th, 2022. Biden-Harris administration unveiled on Thursday a massive government-wide action plan to advance racial equity across 90 federal agencies with more than 300 strategies and commitments laid out by government leaders. How many people heard about this? I talked about this in April when it happened. The announcements from the dozens of federal agencies are the start of fulfilling an executive order signed by President Joe Biden on his first day in office. He signed 10 executive orders his first day in office. You can read them at whitehouse.gov. Executive Order 13985 was one of those executive orders. That's what this is the result of. On his first day in office, to advance racial equity across the entire federal government across 90 federal agencies. In the bill announcing the Racial Equity Action Plan, President Biden acknowledged that the commitments laid out by his administration must not be seen as just a one-year project, but a generational commitment. Must not be seen as a one-year project, but a generational commitment. These plans are an important step forward, reflecting the Biden-Harris administration's work to make the promise of America real for every American, Biden said. Now, from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Education, the Environmental Protection Agency, each federal agency released its action plan to advance racial equity, to close the myriad gaps in services available to underserved communities. Susan Rice, director of the White House Domestic Policy Council, led the administration's racial equity apparatus to ensure that all U.S. departments adhere to Biden's order to evaluate their agencies and implement strategies to ensure that their services reach communities that have been historically underserved and underrepresented, including Black, Latino, LGBTQ, tribal, and rural populations. Okay, you can read the rest of this article here as well. And they have the information also at whitehouse.gov. That's under Executive Order 13985. All right, so check out the rest of this. Now, this came out April of 2022. How many people heard about this besides on my show? Because I talked about this when this came out. All right, now, I want to go to this right here. I want to go to MSNBC because they dealt with the meeting that Biden had with the civil rights leaders. They dealt with this on MSNBC. Let me see. Why is this doing this? Hold on. Okay. They dealt with this on MSNBC on Friday. Alex Wagner on Alex Wagner Show. Let's go to this clip here. Hold on. It's playing another ad. Stand by. Hold on, stand by.
January 6th insurrection, whether that be through police and state violence, or whether that be through white supremacy, which drives a lot of what we're seeing. And so that alignment in speech last night, you can hear in this meeting today, there is alignment about protecting democracy. We know that Black Americans are among the hardest working, most patriotic people in this country. And we need a democracy that works for Black America and that works for all of America. We need a democracy that does not condone, allow, or facilitate attacks on its own people, whether that be through voter suppression, whether that be what we saw during the January 6th insurrection, whether that be through police state violence, or whether that be through white supremacy, which drives a lot of what we're seeing. It's what the president is there. What we need to do is political muscle in the civil rights community and also among elected officials to push this agenda forward.
That was civil rights attorney Damon Hewitt, who, along with leaders of 7 other Black-led civil rights organizations, declared a state of emergency for democracy earlier this week. Those leaders met with President Biden today, his own stark warning last night about the growing threat from authoritarian and white supremacist forces in the Republican Party. Joining us now is Damon Hewitt, the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Mr. Hewitt, thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So I want to get your thoughts on this sort of very careful needle the president was trying to thread in his remarks last night. He said repeatedly there is a difference between Republicans and MAGA Republicans. And then you look at polling on one of the sort of most basic things in our democracy, the right to vote, and what happened in the 2020 election. I think it's something like 70% of Republicans say they don't think Joe is a legitimate winner of the 2020 election. Do you think people of color see a difference between Republicans and MAGA Republicans?
Well, look, I think that people of color, we can make fine distinctions and see differences. We know who's for us and who's against us, number one. And that does not always stay within the ranks of a certain single party. It's really about who uses their leverage, their sweat equity, their capital towards the interests of Black America, and in this case, towards the interests of democracy. And so I think there's a pretty clear distinction about who does and who does not.
What did you think? Who do you think was the intended audience of the president's remarks last night? On one hand, you would think it's some of those middle of the road Republicans, and yet the response almost uniformly from the Republican Party and from conservatives today has been one of unrelenting criticism. They say that President Biden has in some ways galvanized, I think, the right wing to organize against him. Where is the change supposed to happen? Go ahead.
Right, those are desperate pleas. I heard the president speaking to multiple audiences. He was speaking to his base to let them know that he understands and sees what's happening, and he's not willing just to play nice and sit by and allow it to happen. He was speaking to what's left of the movable middle to say, if you actually care about this country, then you should actually listen to what I have to say. You should follow the policy direction that I'm taking. And he was also speaking to people you may call the never Trumpers out there. I'm sure there's a big question mark, obviously, as to whether those people will swing his way again. But I think he was also speaking to us in the civil rights and advocacy community, because we are in multiple fights on multiple fronts. And we need to see this president standing up and calling it like it is. And that's exactly what we saw in such an eloquent way last night.
And then you had some time with the president today, right? I mean, this is a meeting that is many ways following up on what the president talked about, but also it dovetails with the work that you guys are doing as a coalition. What was the meeting about, and what's the plan to save democracy? Because we all want to know.
Right. Well, this was a part of a series of meetings with the civil rights community that's been planned since this president and vice president took office. So it's not a surprise that we're meeting. We will be there again, and we'll talk about it again. But today, messages coalesced around a broad sense of what it takes to protect democracy and the very fact that democracy is under threat. At the Lawyers Committee, we talk a lot about the promises of democracy. It's about economic opportunity and the notion of not just having a living wage, but having a chance to have prosperity. Just the simple fact of being able to cast a ballot, have that vote count, and have the winner of the election actually be seated. Concepts that should not be novel. And so we talked about today a broad notion of what democracy means, what it takes to protect it. And there are some areas of contest in terms of what the best pressure points should be and what the right policies should be. But overall, there was strong alignment that bringing to America, bringing to Black America, to Brown America, to America overall, a message about the importance of preserving democracy is of utmost importance right now.
Is any of that, the conversation is occurring, but in terms of an action plan, is there anything that can be executed before the midterms? Because I think a lot of people are terrified about what happens in November.
That's right. So look, legislative proposals did not move. The John Lewis Voter Rights Advancement Act and the like, electoral Counts Act reform, what have you. But the president did issue an executive order on voting, on elections. And that executive order, among other things, allows federal agencies or enlists federal agencies in the mission of getting voters registered. We need to see more uptake from federal agencies. My understanding is that as of late spring, early summer, only 2 federal agencies had signed up to make sure that all of their offices around the country were voter registration sites. We need to change that. We need to mobilize and do what's possible in terms of election monitoring. There are some severe limitations on DOJ now after the Shelby decision in 2013. But some state AGs are now empowered to do things of that sort. You saw favorable laws in Virginia, New York. Of course, those are not states in the Deep South, which are of great concern. But there are buttons that can be pushed. And also, we're mobilizing in civil society. At the Lawyers Committee, we convened the National Election Protection Coalition. Our election protection hotline, 866 Our Vote, is operating every single day with expanded hours as we approach election day. So we have to move and shake in so many ways. There's no easy button, Alex. There's no one federal prescription at this point, especially without legislation. I will say this, however. President Biden expressed a significant openness and eagerness even today to try again on federal voting rights legislation that will protect the right to vote. Of course, that's not likely to happen in this Congress.
Yeah.
In fact, the election this fall, really a lot hangs in the balance in terms of those results. But he expressed an openness and an eagerness to make a renewed push.
A lot does hang in the balance, and that is an understatement. Damon Hewitt, the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Keep fighting the good fight, please, Mr. Hewitt. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Okay, so that was from Alex Wagner's show on MSNBC. Alex Wagner tonight. She spoke with Damon Hewitt, executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. That is the organization that Kristen Clark headed up before she became Assistant Attorney General of the Civil Rights Division for the Department of Justice. Okay, now, and that interview was from Friday, September 2nd, 2022. That's at MSNBC's website. Okay, now, okay, so we got that, we did that. Now we need to talk about Jackson, Mississippi. All right, so some progress is being made in the water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi. Is not where it needs to be. It's not fixed yet, but President Joe Biden declared the state of emergency. FEMA was there. The FEMA director went to visit and go on and be on the ground in Jackson, Mississippi on either Thursday or Friday. The FEMA director was there. On Wednesday, there was a press conference that Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba held. And we talked about it on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I was on Martin Unfiltered on Wednesday. Normally I'm on Fridays, but they didn't have a Friday show because of Labor Day weekend. And they called me on Roland's Booker called me on Wednesday, and at the last minute asked me if I could be on the show on Wednesday. So I said, okay, I'll do it on Wednesday. Let me go to this quote here from NBCnews.com. Jackson's water system may need billions in repairs. Federal infrastructure funds aren't a quick fix. Federal infrastructure funds are not a quick fix. Now, there's going to be there's going to be $449 billion or so from the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill going to Mississippi in general, not specifically Jackson, Mississippi, but Mississippi in general. State of Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country. So it needs everything. Okay. So it needs more than just the funds from the infrastructure bill. Okay. It needs a lot more than just that. If we look at this article quickly, and then we're going to go to the press conference. I'll share an excerpt of the press conference and an excerpt of Roland Martin Unfiltered. Jackson's water system may need billions of repairs. Federal infrastructure funds aren't a quick fix. Federal infrastructure funds are not a quick fix. Now, this does not mean the federal infrastructure funds are not needed, but it's saying that they need something faster than that, and they need more than was allocated in the infrastructure bill, because the infrastructure bill is for all of the U.S., not just Mississippi. We're already in a life or death crisis, said a Jackson resident and activist who is helping to distribute water in the city of Jackson, Mississippi. Now, this article is from Friday, September 2nd, 2022, NBCnews.com. Residents in Mississippi's capital, Jackson, Mississippi, who are currently without drinking water from the tap, without safe drinking water from the tap, and in some neighborhoods lack enough water pressure to flush toilets, had good reason to hope that last year's ambitious $1 trillion federal infrastructure deal would help. Now, also, Mayor Lumumba this past week said that it's going to cost about $1 billion. It's an estimate of $1 billion to fix Jackson, Mississippi's water system. Okay, not the entire state of Mississippi, but Jackson, Mississippi's water system. President Joe Biden shared the city's struggles when promoting the infrastructure bill in August 2021. He said, "Never again can we allow what happened in Flint, Michigan, and Jackson, Mississippi." Now, in a state where financial windfalls are rare, the federal package could be transformational for Jackson, Mississippi, which desperately needs to fix a brittle system in which sewer lines often break and residents regularly experience outages and notices to boil their water. Okay, now Mississippi is set to receive $429 million, not $449 million. Mississippi is set to receive $429 million from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, to fix its water and wastewater systems over the next 5 years, mostly through loans, some of them forgivable, and grants provided through the Environmental Protection Agency. So $429 million from the infrastructure bill is coming to Mississippi over the next 5 years. You would think, as poor as Mississippi is, you would think that Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, the public hanging woman, would vote for the infrastructure bill. She voted against the bill from Mississippi. Then also, in the House, the only representative from Mississippi to vote for the bill was Benny Thompson, who's the chair of the Homeland Security Committee. He was the only one. So Benny Thompson was on Alex Wagner's show on MSNBC. I think it was Thursday. He was on. I have that clip also, because he goes into some of the history of how Jackson, Mississippi got to where it is. Okay, this is extremely important because this is understanding the importance of politics, laws, elections, and the need to have the right people in elected office as well. Okay, so I'm going to share that clip with you also. That's extremely important to understand all this. In Jackson, Mississippi is 83% African American, 25% of the population lives in poverty. It's a city of about 150,000 people. Now, but as the city remains under a state of emergency, it could face a lengthy wait for some of these funds and a battle for the city's share. One of the two state agencies responsible for pushing out millions of dollars in federal infrastructure funds said it could be at least mid to late 2023 before any allocations roll out, and Jackson, Mississippi won't be the only one coming to the table. The money is meant to reach communities across the state. So that $429 million is for all of the state of Mississippi, not for Jackson, Mississippi. Okay, all of the state of Mississippi needs help. Now, even if the state gave Jackson, Mississippi all of the funds it is set to receive, it would not be enough. Jackson, Mississippi Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba, a Democrat, has said the price tag to overhaul the city's water infrastructure could balloon into the billions. Okay. This past week, I heard him say it could be $1 billion. That far exceeds the money allocated under the infrastructure law. Now, Danielle Holmes, a Jackson resident who is helping to distribute in the city and works as a national social justice organizer with Repairs of the Breach, which mobilizes low-income voters in the Poor People's Campaign. So that's Reverend William Barber's organization. Danielle Holmes said, "We're already in a life or death crisis. Lives have been compromised daily due to the water crisis, and pushing this another year to 2023 is simply not going to work for the citizens of Jackson, especially when we talk about humanity and preserving life." Now, no deaths linked to the water outage had been reported as of Friday, but health advocates have expressed concerns about the vulnerability of dialysis patients who need access to clean water for treatment. There's one mechanism for repair funding that could reach Jackson sooner. This year, the Mississippi State Legislature created a $450 million water infrastructure funding program with money that the state received from the congressional COVID relief package that passed in 2021. Okay. Now that COVID relief package in 2021, it sounds like they're talking about the American Rescue Plan. No Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for the American Rescue Plan. Only Democrats voted for the American Rescue Plan. And Democrats were the ones that wrote the bill. So here you have the Mississippi legislature that created a $450 million water infrastructure funding program with the money they got from a bill that only Democrats voted for, and Biden signs in the law, and it was Democrats that wrote the bill. But the Mississippi State Legislature is controlled by Republicans. So the Mississippi State Legislature is controlling the money that it was only Democrats that voted for the bill that the money came from. But the plan requires cities and counties to put up matching dollars. In Jackson, Mississippi, only has about $25 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds to commit, according to Senator John Horn. Applications for the program opened on Thursday, this past Thursday, okay, which was September 1st. And some of that money could be awarded by the end of the year. The infrastructure in Mississippi's capital has been likened to peanut brittle. The infrastructure in Mississippi's capital, Jackson, Mississippi, has been likened to peanut brittle, prone to water main breaks, perennial service disruptions, and sewage spills onto residential streets. And sewage spills onto residential streets. This is the capital of Mississippi. Now, some pipes in the system were installed before the Great Depression. Well, the Great Depression starts basically about 1929 with the stock market crash of October 1929. Then you go in 1930. So some of these pipes were installed before 1930. They're almost 100 years old. There's also a history of deferred maintenance, which has culminated in repair costs eclipsing the city's entire budget. The consequences of kicking upkeep down the road have been acute. Boil water notices are common in Jackson, Mississippi, and concerns among residents about contaminants slipping through are persistent. Now, there's been a boil water advisory in Jackson, Mississippi since July of 2022. There's been a boil water advisory in Jackson, Mississippi since July of 2022. Now, in 2016, routine testing found elevated lead levels leading state health officials, elevated lead levels in the water, leading state health officials to warn pregnant people, pregnant women, and young children not to drink the city's water, an advisory that remained in place as of last year, 2021. Even when there's no advisory, some locals shun drinking water from the tap. That means paying a bill each month for a service that they can't fully use, the water bill, and also at the grocery store for cases of bottled water. Wallets took an even bigger hit in February 2021 when many residents lost access to running water for a month after a cold snap froze machinery. Now, some locals were unable to work as businesses closed. Now, attempts to fix the problems have been marred by insufficient revenue at the city level in the wake of decades of population loss. And that was precipitated by white flight going back 30 years or so, white flight in Jackson, Mississippi, and white people leaving Jackson, Mississippi, taking the tax base with them. Okay. And in Jackson, Mississippi, having a declining tax base. There's also been a lack of aggressive investment by the state legislature that to many Black Jacksonians is a painful modern day reflection of Mississippi's long troubled history with race and racism. Jackson, Mississippi is a majority Black city with Democratic leadership, while the state house, the state legislature that is located there, has been dominated in recent sessions by primarily white male Republican leadership. The state legislature has been dominated in recent sessions by primarily white male Republican leadership. And despite Mississippi having the largest percentage of African-American residents in the country, all the state's statewide elected officials are white. Mississippi has the largest African-American population in the country, but all of their statewide elected officials are white. Now, this also goes back to the article that we talked about last Sunday from The Guardian. This piece right here from The Guardian, Mississippi's Jim Crow era felony voting law is constitutional, federal court rules. Okay, so if you saw our show from last Sunday, we discussed this because now when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered Friday before last, I made the connection between, when I was on Wednesday, and we talked about Mississippi, and we're gonna go to that clip, go to that press conference that Mayor Lumumba did. When I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered this past Wednesday, I made the connection between the federal court just ruling, Fifth Circuit federal court ruling that Mississippi's felony voter disenfranchisement law that dates back to 1890, they just ruled that this is constitutional because there were recent tweaks made in the 20th century, and they're saying it doesn't discriminate against African Americans anymore. Some nonsense. Okay. Mississippi's Jim Crow era felony voting law is constitutional, federal court rules. Law was passed in 1890. It was tailored to exclude the Negro, but appeals court says tweaks in the 20th century cleansed discriminatory taint. Now, this article is from August 26, 2022. We talked about this on last Sunday's show, and this deals with Section 241 of the Mississippi State Constitution that was rewritten in 1890 at the Mississippi State Convention, and they imposed poll taxes, literacy tests, and also felony disenfranchisement. The felony disenfranchisement law, meaning that if you had a felony conviction, you lost your right to vote. Okay. That voters removed burglary. So what happened was there was a majority of judges on the U.S. District Court of Appeals of the Fifth Circuit did not dispute the original provision was racist and unconstitutional, but they said Mississippi had since cleansed the provision of its discriminatory taint by tweaking the provision twice in the 20th century. So what happened was certain crimes, if you committed those, you would lose your voting rights. But they chose these crimes at the Mississippi State Convention because they believed that these were crimes more likely to be committed by African Americans. Okay, so this was a roundabout way to get around the 15th Amendment of 1870, which guaranteed the right to vote for African American men. Mississippi officials initially adopted the provision at a constitutional convention in 1890. And we deal with this in the online class I teach, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We deal with this. We deal with some of the state constitutions in that class, and look at what happened after Reconstruction ends. So Mississippi officials initially adopted the provision at the Constitutional Convention in 1890, choosing crimes such as theft, arson, embezzlement, and bigamy that they believed African Americans were more likely to commit. Quote, "We came here to exclude the Negro," said the convention's president. His name was Solomon Saladin Calhoun. He was a white county judge. "Nothing short of this will answer." Okay, so in 1950, voters removed burglary from the list of disfranchising crimes in 1950 and added murder and rape to the list in 1968. Okay, but 16% of Mississippi's African-American voting age population, 16% of Mississippi's African-American voting age population cannot vote because of felony disenfranchisement laws. Okay, 10% of the state's voting age population overall can't vote. And that's the highest rate in the country who can't vote because of felony disenfranchisement, 10%. But 16% of the African-American voting age population in Mississippi cannot vote because of this law. All right. So that reduces the ability of these African Americans, like, for instance, in Jackson, Mississippi, to vote these people, vote these Republicans, especially these white male Republicans, out of the state legislature who are oppressing them with their policies, and voting Governor Tate Reeves out of office. And that dumbass governor just sent back $100 million in federal assistance for rental assistance. Okay, that's what Governor Tate Reeves just did in August. There was a let me see. There was something that I posted here dealing with this. Governor Tate Reeves. Hold on, let me see something here. I posted this a couple of days ago. Okay, this right here. So there's an article from Mississippi Free Press. If we look at this, I put this on my Facebook page. It's a before and after. Earlier this month, Governor Reeves returned $100 million in federal rent aid that would have helped poor, elderly, and disabled Mississippians afford housing. He called it a experimental socialist program being pushed by Washington. Then later in August 2022, Governor Reeves requests emergency federal declaration for water crisis. So the federal assistance for the water crisis is not socialism, but the federal assistance for rental aid is socialism, and you send $100 million back. This fool needs to be voted out of office. This is from the Mississippi Free Press. Okay, I'll pull up that article here. I want to go to the press conference from Roland Martin Unfiltered because we run out of time here, and I do not want to be here all day. I literally do not. So I've got a lot of work to do. Let's go to this one here. Okay, this is from Roland Martin Unfiltered. This is the press conference from Wednesday, August 31st. And then we talked about, here's an excerpt of that press conference, and we talked about it on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Okay, let me get past this ad. All right, hold on. I thought this would have queued up. Let me cue this up. 3124. Okay.
The overall success of our public works department. Yes.
If I may, just two really quick questions. Do we have an assessment of how many service lines customers are affected generally with that water? And the second question is just in terms of messaging. There have been a lot of statements of just don't drink the water cleanly, but to clarify, if the water is boiled, it's still safe to drink.
We have not gotten an official word from the Department of Health to just say don't drink it, in a blanket way. Right now, the official stance right now is that we are under a boil water notice, and that is what we continue to advise our residents. And your first question, remind me?
It was just, do we have any idea of the number of people affected with low pressure water?
We know that we experienced it system-wide. We don't have an exact total, but I can tell you this, and I should have begun with this, is that we have seen steady improvements in the system. There are individuals who did not have water pressure at all yesterday, in which water pressure has returned, and the reports of the tanks is that there are steady gains being achieved each and every moment. In the middle of peak consumption, which is during the daytime hours, we've maintained steady. At night is a moment that we look to have the greatest amount of recovery, and so we saw great recovery yesterday, and there's been encouraging news and signs ever since last night in terms of where we're seeing our tanks come back to.
So you have the numbers gone down since yesterday, or?
No, it's steady at this. It's okay. Gone up since yesterday.
Okay.
It's gone up since yesterday. I mean, in terms of the number of people with water. Let me clarify. The number of individuals. There are more people with water since yesterday, right? Due to the gains that we made in the system overnight, and we've been steady with the production. We don't typically see the biggest gains in the daytime because that is when consumption is at its highest. And so we look to recover even more through the night hours. Yes,
in 2020, the EPA requested an alternative water plan for a situation just like this, distributing water to residents. In April 2020, Jackson submitted that plan. It was called the Alternative Water Source Plan Development and Implementation. I believe Keisha Saunders wrote that plan. Part of that plan, maybe the key part of that plan, was acquiring a contract with a third party, like a Kroger or some sort of grocery chain, to actually deliver the water. In those years since then, Jackson has not acquired that contract, and he highlighted that it's a critical standard. Why not?
So first and foremost, we didn't have a contract in place, but we were receiving donations to meet the need. And so we were getting it by donation and not by expense. But today, to make certain that we feel the contract standpoint of that, and make sure that the contract in place to meet that water consent and go beyond the donations that we're meeting that need, you would have seen today's city council meeting that we actually agreed with the Coca-Cola company in order to meet that need. We've been distributing water to residents in the midst of these challenges every single time that residents have been without water. Every single time we've had our constituent services department not only deliver to fire stations, but to personally deliver to our elderly residents and have several water distributions across the city. And so that's where we get into technical violations, which say that we didn't have a contract. But the reality is that providing that water, we were just merely taking advantage of the fact that we have high expenses trying to rectify these challenges. And if we had the benefit of corporations who were willing to provide it to us for free, we certainly were taking advantage.
Can you speak to whether or not FEMA has contacted the fire chief distributing water at the city's fire stations? We've heard that they have not contacted them at this point.
I can just share with you my discussion with Mr. McCraney yesterday and today. He said that he would be in contact with them. He said that they would provide assistance to them. I believe that is going to take place. Hasn't taken place. Whether they have talked at this very moment or not, I can't share with you because I do not know directly.
In terms of just the main issue that's causing this pressure right now, yesterday spoke about the flooding and the governor yesterday talked about pumps are not working. So in terms of fixing this current pressure issue,
it was the flood water that led to the challenge. Now, what typically happens, OB Curtis services the majority of our residents in the city. When OB Curtis, which is near the reservoir in Ridgeland, when it has challenges, then we depend on our older water treatment facility, fuel, right? In order to make up the difference. Fuel was functioning at its regular pace. But as we were looking at fuel to increase its production, to supplement what OB Curtis was missing, we had challenges with a pump that led it to not be able to increase its production at fuel. And so the challenges that OB Curtis was dealing with the chemical composition, the challenges at fuel in order to increase the production was dealing with an inability to get the pump to another pump to increase that.
So I actually clarify. If boiling water for 1 minute, it is safe to drink. That was directly from the show.
Well, you can join me up here, and I appreciate you for sharing that. All right, so that's consistent. Thank y'all very much. Thank you.
This is an iPhone 11 Pro from Back Market. They specialize in refurbished devices that feel like new at secondhand pricing. Now, at Back Market,
take care of the echo.
Folks, that was that was earlier today a news conference led by the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, Chokwe Lumumba, and we live streamed that earlier, and we wanted to show all of it because this is an important story. National media has not given it the kind of coverage it deserves, and we wanted to do so. This is the state capital of Mississippi. It is a predominantly African-American city. Deion Sanders, who's the head coach of the Jackson State football team, says they, just like everybody in the city, are being impacted by this water crisis.
We hit with a little crisis. The city of Jackson, we don't have water. Water means we don't have air conditioning. We can't use toilets. We don't have water. Therefore, we don't have ice, which pretty much places a burden on the program. So right now, we're operating in crisis mode. I got to get these kids off campus, the ones that live on campus, the one that lives in the city of Jackson, into a hotel and accommodate them so that they can shower properly and take care of their just needs. Make sure all our kids are fed and all our kids have the necessities of life for the next several days until this crisis resides. That's what we're operating in right now. So we're going to find somewhere to practice, find somewhere that can accommodate every darn thing that we need and desire to be who we desire to be, and that's dominant. The devil is a lie. You ain't gonna get us today, baby.
Folks, as I said, President Joe Biden has already declared a disaster relief authorizing funds to be released to Jackson, Mississippi. This is a huge issue. Now, the mayor had that news conference because the governor, Tate Reeves, Republican, made a lot of different comments at his news conference, And the mayor wasn't even invited to attend that one. And that's why Mayor Lumumba wanted to come out and speak directly to the public. My panel today, Assistant Professor, University of Central Florida, joining us now, Larry Walker, Jason Nichols, Senior Lecturer, African American Studies Department, University of Maryland, College Park, Michael Imhotep, host the African History Network show. Glad to have all three of you here. This issue of water, and I keep trying to walk people through this, Larry. It's a major issue when we're talking about health. We were seeing right now, where they are making decisions in Arizona, in Nevada, in California about reservoirs. Water is a basic fundamental thing, and we're seeing what happens when we have crises in this country dealing with water. We saw what happened in Flint, Michigan, and they're still dealing with the after effects of that.
Yeah, so Roland, we need to talk about, a failure of systems, particularly government systems. So listen, when we have these infrastructure issues, whether it's in Jackson, Mississippi, you talked about obviously what happened in Flint, Michigan, it is a failure of systems and usually of policymakers. It's no coincidence that Flint and Jackson, Mississippi also happen, like you said, predominantly African-American, Jackson more than 80%. So this is an issue that has been, an infrastructure issue that's been going on for decades, and particularly the failure from the state, if they're getting federal funds, to make sure they address infrastructure issues. The other thing, when you talk about water as it relates to this issue and other issues you talked about in the Western United States, is that we had to connect this also to climate change. And so some of the environmental challenges we're seeing with flooding and hurricanes and various other issues, scientists believe these will continue to increase. So then we have to talk about what communities are going to be impacted the most. And we know from research, Black and brown communities could predominantly be impacted. And we see obviously what's in Jackson, Mississippi. I congratulate the mayor for, coming out and speaking. I can't believe the governor wouldn't have invited him to the press conference, but then I understand how policymakers work. But this is an issue that is impacting, like you said, the capital of the state, and that it's really important that the mayor and the governor are on the same page. But it's important for the governor to make sure not only is he communicating, via staff, et cetera, but that the mayor is invited to these events, considering all the people, over 100,000 people will be impacted by the flooding and then the system not working and not having access to clean water. The other thing, Roland, in terms of we talk about impacting a majority Black city, we also have to talk about the elderly and other populations that are disproportionately impacted when things like this happen. We have to make sure there are systems in place in emergencies like this happen, that not only in terms of bottled water, but there are other resources available in terms of healthcare, et cetera, to support the needs of these populations.
Jason, what's crazy to me, and I keep telling people, voting matters. Republicans controlling the state, you see what they do. They don't give a damn about when it comes to the infrastructure issue. They say they do. And they damn sure don't give a damn when you have these Democratic-run cities. But here's a perfect example, though, that they love talking about smaller government. Oh, but they'll take that money from President Biden that he authorized last night.
Absolutely. We've seen this happen over and over again. And I'm really happy that my colleague mentioned climate change, because I think there's been a messaging issue to African Americans about how climate change affects them, how climate change is important, and how this is a race-based issue. And I think the Democrats have actually failed at actually messaging that in many ways to a lot of communities. I talk to brothers all the time, and they're like, yeah, they keep talking about climate change. I'm not thinking about an electric vehicle. And I'm like, no, this actually affects our communities. And, you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about, the state of Mississippi being run by Republicans. They have a supermajority in all of their levers of government. And then you have Jackson, Mississippi, which should be, the most important city and be kind of a shining beacon for the state. But yet it's underfunded, and we see the infrastructure fall apart. And, my colleague mentioned Flint, Michigan, and you mentioned Flint, Roland, but we could talk about Puerto Rico and other places where infrastructure has failed, where it's majority people of color. And so voting absolutely matters, not only at the local level, which the city of Jackson elected Chokwe Lumumba, who I understand why Tate Reeves didn't invite Chokwe Lumumba, because as you can see, he's really good at what he does and was probably afraid of being upstaged. But also, we need to understand that there needs to be all of the efforts in the world to keep Republicans from gerrymandering our votes, from keeping power out of the hands of the voters, because Mississippi is the blackest state in the country, 39% black. There is an opportunity there potentially for Mississippi to be, another Georgia. But we've got to make sure that the vote is protected.
Michael, this is from a CBS story. Like many, go to my iPad, please. Like many cities, Jackson faces water system problems it can't afford to fix. Its tax base has eroded the past few decades as the population decreased. The result, this is an ad on their page here. It has eroded the past few decades as the population decreased. The result of mostly white flight to the suburbs that began after public schools integrated in 1970. The city's population is now more than 80% black, with about 25% of its residents living in poverty. Look, you're there in Detroit. Same thing happened in Detroit when Coleman Young became mayor of Detroit. And so what you have is white folks choosing to leave, taking their money with them, and then these state leaders say, oh, to hell with you, y'all can't run y'all city. Well, it's a little hard to run your city when racism has impacted economic mobility of black folks. So therefore, it's now a poorer city as a result.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to come to, Roland. And I'm going to connect this to the story you did on Monday dealing with Mississippi's Jim Crow era felony voting law. And the federal court ruled that that is constitutional. That goes back to the Mississippi State Convention of 1890, because white supremacy is a system. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. And this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with white flight. And here in Detroit, the white flight even began before Mayor Young became mayor, January 1974. Okay, we saw white flight going back to the 1950s here in Detroit, and the declining tax base. You see the same thing in Jackson, Mississippi. The state legislature is controlled by Republicans. You have the Republican governor, Tate Reeves. You had Cindy Hyde-Smith, the public hanging woman, one of the two senators from Mississippi. She voted against the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. And what this does is this shows how climate change disproportionately impacts African Americans, especially when you have African American led cities like this. Okay, so we have to understand how all this is connected.
Indeed, folks. We're going to continue to cover this crisis taking place in Jackson, Mississippi. We'll give the latest as we find out. Going to go to a quick break. We come back.
All right. So that was from Roland Martin Unfiltered from Wednesday, August 31st. I was on as a panelist. Normally I'm on Fridays, but because of Labor Day holiday, they didn't have a show Labor Day. And normally on Sundays, we're on 10 a.m. on Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. But because of Labor Day holiday, they shut down. They weren't broadcasting live shows, so I decided to broadcast on my own. I showed you the meme dealing with Governor Tate Reeves and sending back the $100 million in rental assistance. Okay, and that is from this article here from the MississippiFreePress.org. MississippiFreePress.org. Rental assistance. Let me go to this here. Now, once again, this is an example of how elections have consequences and the devastation that Governor Tate Reeves and Republicans have done to the state of Mississippi, why they need to be voted out of office. This is from August 5th, 2022. Rental assistance funds still available in Harrison County after Governor Reeves ends program. Let me see here. So this he's sent back $100 million. Wait a second, hold on. Where are we? It's right here. But the governor's, let's see. Renters in Harrison and Hinds counties are not likely to suffer from Governor Reeves' order this week to end access to a key pandemic era rental assistance program 10 days from now. Most Mississippians who need help paying their rent or utilities will no longer be able to apply to the rental assistance for Mississippians program after August 15th, after the governor ordered an end to the state's participation earlier this week. The governor's proclamation is unlikely to affect those renters because those counties independently manage money from the emergency rental assistance program and are not a part of the Mississippi Home Corporation statewide program. While other rental assistance programs remain available for certain emergency situations, like Emergency Solutions Grant and Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, none have the scope or funding of ERA or RAMP, which have helped tens of thousands of Mississippi families avoid imminent eviction during the pandemic. Okay, so let's see here. We need to make hard decisions. Let me see something. Okay, at a Wednesday press event, Governor Tate Reeves characterized the continuation of the program as a leftist plot. Okay, he's talking about there's $100 million that he sent back to the federal government that came from the American Rescue Plan to help people stay in their homes. Governor Tate Reeves, Republican, governor of Mississippi, he said this: the experimental socialist programs being pushed from Washington are not caring. The experimental socialist programs being pushed from Washington are not caring. They are cruel. They are cruel. They trap Mississippians in a cycle of dependency like a loan shark or a bookie offering free cash and never mentioning the downsides. But the $100 million in rental assistance, they don't have to pay that back. Housing and renter advocates across the state quickly fired back. Vangela Wade, president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Justice, released a statement lambasting the governor's action. Quote, "This decision shows a complete disregard for people's health and safety. Nearly 1 in 3 renter households in Mississippi is extremely low income, and our state is short more than 48,000 affordable rental homes for extremely low income renters," her statement read in part. Specifically, the governor questioned if such a program was necessary in the late pandemic period. Quote, "This is a program that when initially started made sense because many of these individuals lost employment through no fault of their own. In some areas, individuals lost employment because of the government and the decisions that they made." You mean the Trump administration? You mean how the Trump administration mishandled the COVID pandemic? Now in Mississippi, if you want to work, the state offers generous programs to pay for your training, Governor Tate Reeves said. Now, Reeves acknowledged that his action was intended to press more Mississippians into the workforce. He said, quote, "We also know that we need to make hard decisions to improve our workforce participation rate. That's what we're doing here today." Let's close this out. All right. Now, additionally, the governor claimed that the second appropriation of money funding the program completely stripped all restrictions from the program. Okay, so read the rest of this here. This is from MississippiFreePress.org. Rental assistance funds still available in Harrison County after governor ends program. That's from August 5th, 2022. All right, now I want to go to this clip here. This is from Representative Benny Thompson, who chairs the Homeland Security Committee in the House of Representatives, but he also is the chair of the January 6th commission. Okay. He is from Mississippi. He represents Mississippi. And he was on Alex Wagner show, Alex Wagner Tonight on MSNBC. And he talked about Jackson, Mississippi's water catastrophe and some of the history behind this. Now, he was as terrible as the infrastructure in Jackson, Mississippi is, he was the only member of the House of Representatives that represents Jackson, that represents the state of Mississippi, to vote for the infrastructure bill. Okay, hold on. Let me close it. All right. Let me see. There should be a okay, hold on. Let's go to this.
Water system in the capital city of Jackson had failed. There was someone notably absent from the dais, the Democratic mayor of Jackson. Local news outlets later reported that he had not been invited to the governor's news conference. And although the mayor has since argued that both the city and the state are working together, it seems quite apparent that there is a disconnect between state and local leadership. And that breakdown could not come at a worse time. The water crisis facing Jackson comes at a point in which the city is already grappling with a dire set of circumstances. 1 in 4 residents live in poverty. And in some of the hardest hit parts of Jackson, the average household makes just $25,000 a year. In some cases, affected households are pulling in just $15,000 annually. Since the year 2000, the annual median household income in Jackson has dropped about $6,500, which amounts to a whopping 15%. Meanwhile, these are the residents who are being asked to keep afloat a water infrastructure system that is in some areas more than 100 years old. The city is very plainly dealing with an eroded and shrinking tax base, as well as a crumbling water system. And here is how the state has responded. The governor famously vetoed a bipartisan bill that would have helped both poor people in Jackson pay their water bills while also helping the city collect much needed water revenue. He did so because he was concerned about giving the impression that, quote, the government has free money floating around to pay for all of these things. In addition, the state legislature killed a bill that would have allowed Jackson to raise a city sales tax by 1% in order to help pay for much needed sewer repairs. That bill was tanked after the Republican House Speaker publicly expressed his doubt about the measure, saying that it created a dangerous precedent for other cities in the state. This sort of inaction is indicative of how the state has dealt with Jackson's decades-long water problem. And now the city is grappling with yet another period of acute crisis, one that is affecting nearly every part of daily life. Joining us now is Mississippi Congressman Benny Thompson, who represents a large part of Jackson. He is also chairman of the January 6th committee. And we should note that Congressman Thompson was the only member of Mississippi's entire House delegation to vote for the federal infrastructure bill that brought badly needed funds to his state. Congressman Thompson, thank you for being here tonight. I am sorry on behalf of the rest of America that this is happening to the city of Jackson. It is a crisis and it is inexcusable. Can you first enlighten us as to what the Republican-led legislature has done vis-a-vis Jackson's problems? It just seems, at least on the outside looking in, that they have not done as much as they could have to help the people of Jackson maintain and upgrade the infrastructure they so badly need.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Alex. Jackson, Mississippi is the capital city of the state of Mississippi. Government, it's the seat of government for our state. When you come to our capital city, it's very historic. But like a lot of big cities, the population is predominantly minority, and the mayor and city council is predominantly minority. And they have to look for opportunities to keep the city afloat. Everything you outlined in your monologue before you introduced me It's what most cities in our state do when they need to generate revenue. It's just that every time the city of Jackson would put forth similar methods, that always be another issue. And so it's disheartening for a person like me who vote to bring money to my state that desperately need it and see Republican elected officials do just the opposite of what the monies were intended to do. We need help. Our water system is antiquated. There's no doubt about it. In order to do it and get it right, we have to have help. President Biden, as you know, signed a disaster declaration that will help us tremendously, but it won't fix the entire problem. The perception that federal, state, and local people are working together, that's not true. Everything that you see without me representing Jackson or without the mayor who's elected in Jackson is true. Our governor decides to do things on his own, which is unfortunate. We helped get the disaster declaration because it's the right thing to do. So we want our governor to say, look, Mayor Lumumba, Congressman Thompson, we'll sit down and work this out together. I'm optimistic with this declaration. It requires cooperation. So if we're going to ask for FEMA's help, FEMA will be at the table saying, look, the cavalry is here. Help is here. Now let's get this done.
Chairman, I got to ask you, this is a problem that we see happening in majority Black cities all over the country, whether it's Flint, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Washington, D.C., whether it's Jackson. And we have in your state a white Republican-led state house, many of whom the most powerful members live outside of the city. This isn't their problem. I mean, do you feel like this is the legacy of structural racism? How do you look at this? And how do you look at the color lines, which so clearly inform these crises?
Well, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. I don't know of any white-run city that's a capital city that's being treated like Jackson, Mississippi is. We can fix it, but we need our Republican elected officials who have been receiving the largest of the federal money coming from Washington to grow their cities. Their highways are better. Their water systems are better. The entire infrastructure of the suburban communities are being developed at the expense of the inner city. They use the inner city's population to get the money, and then they spend the money in the suburbs. And so what's happening here with Jackson now is the mayors are struggling. The mayor of Jackson is struggling because the resources that he so desperately need and the 150,000+ individuals in the city who also need it, that money is going to the suburbs. That's not how it should go. And I actually shared that with the president today, that if monies are being sent to states and those monies are not going to the neediest of the people, we have to clear it up. It's not right. And so we're going to work with the governor. I look forward to meeting with him in person. The conference calls are one thing, but you have to meet an individual across the table, eye to eye, and work it out. So we're struggling in Jackson. We have been on a boil water alert for over a month.
Yes.
Now we have some quality issues in our city where our schools are not open, they're virtual.
Yes.
And so our governor, with the help of the federal government, we can get this done. But you can't use a double standard for Jackson. What's good for the suburbs is good for Jackson.
For the city.
We don't have to have a difference.
Congressman, we wish you the best of luck in solving a crisis that should not be happening in America in the year 2022. Mississippi Congressman, Chairman Benny Thompson, thank you so much for your time and for all your efforts.
Okay, so that was from Alex Wagner's show. That was from Alex Wagner's show. Alex Wagner tonight, September 1st, 2022. That's on MSNBC.com. So check out that segment. Really good interview with Representative Benny Thompson. Jackson, Mississippi water catastrophe lays bare state's failures of governance. Lays bare state's failure of governance. Okay, now also you can check this out here. This is at build.gov, and this deals with the infrastructure bill. This may be at whitehouse.gov also. This deals with the money coming from the infrastructure bill going to Mississippi. Building a Better America, build.gov. President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law is delivering in Mississippi as of July 22nd. The Biden-Harris administration has hit the ground running to implement the bipartisan infrastructure law, and it is already delivering results for the people of Mississippi. To date, $1.1 billion in bipartisan infrastructure law funding has been announced and is headed to Mississippi, with 107 specific projects identified for funding. 107 specific projects identified for funding. This year alone, Mississippi will receive more than $816 million for transportation to invest in roads, bridges, public transit, ports, and airports, and over $7 for clean water. Now this is for all of the state of Mississippi. Okay, this is as of July 2022. This is before the state of emergency was declared. And as of today, more than 166,382 households across the state are receiving affordable internet due to the bipartisan infrastructure bill. More than 166,000 households in the state of Mississippi are receiving affordable internet because of the infrastructure bill. Many more projects will be added in the coming months as funding opportunities become grant awards and as formula funds become specific projects. By reaching communities all across Mississippi, including rural communities and historically underserved populations, the law makes critical investments that will improve lives for the people of Mississippi and position the state success. Okay, so it goes through and breaks down all this stuff that's coming to Mississippi. Okay, I think they have this breakdown for each state also, by the way. So you can check for your respective state, build.gov. You can check for your respective state to see what's coming to your state. Okay, so we're going to continue here. Hey, if you like this type of information, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like. Also, you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. We definitely need your support this week. We have a lot of financial challenges that we're trying to meet this week. Also, if you saw the interview I did with Dr. Dave Anderson, who's the founder of the Empowerment Radio Network, the national radio network I used to be on. I interviewed him it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I interviewed him Wednesday. I think it was one of those days. I interviewed him. And so we have that broadcast re-airing. But he's going to get me a press pass to the Congressional Black Caucus because the Empowerment Radio Network is going to be the Congressional Black Caucus and some other networks he's with. So he said he's going to get me a press pass the Congressional Black Caucus weekend, the weekend of September 28th. But in addition to some other financial challenges, financial issues we're trying to take care of this week, I got to raise money to be able to do that before the trip to Congressional Black Caucus weekend, things like this, because I'll be broadcasting from there also. We did that back in about 2016 when I was with Empowerment Radio Network. It was myself and Bev Smith, who used to be on BET. We were on the network, so we had a booth there and broadcast it there. So we're going to do that also. So you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. And I know through PayPal you can set it up for recurring donations as well. And then also when you register for our online classes, this helps support us also, because I've got to some things I got to take care of this week, and then also I've got to get things taken care of for the trip to the Congressional Black Caucus and pay for all that. Okay, so you can help support us, and I'll be broadcasting from there and doing interviews, things of that nature. So we have the information on the homepage of our website. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. When you go to it, it says Michael and shows my picture there. These other ones here and others like them are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. They've been stealing money from us. I'm still trying to get them shut down. When you click right here, it shows you a Cash App barcode, so you can scan that. You can support us as well. So $15, $25, $50, $100, $150, $200. Whatever you can, however you can support us, we definitely appreciate that. Now we have new online courses starting up this Thursday, September 8th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Class number 1 of Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Class number 1 of Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So this is an 8-week online class. We have some new content for it also, and I'm going through and restructured some things. But we do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. We deal with thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. We deal with look at different African civilizations as well, and we go through history chronologically and see what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We look at the impact that Christopher Columbus has also, in Columbus on his 4 voyages, starting August 1492 when he set sail on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. We look at the impact that Bartolomé de las Casas had also, right? Reverend Bishop Bartolomé de las Casas, and in the Asiento of 1518, Asiento de Negros of 1518, in King Charles V. All this history we deal with in the class. So you can use debit card, credit card, PayPal. Click right here to register here. It takes you to our next page, our Learn World page, and this is the fall 2022 class. Click right here to enroll. Class is on sale, $80, regularly $130. Okay, it's on sale, $80, regularly $130. So hey Dale, how you doing, Dale Morrow? Yeah, this is a struggle, Dale. You know how it is. And then you have a lot of people who think all this stuff just happens for free. You know, a lot of people think this stuff just happens and like no bills have to be paid or anything like that. You know, our loyal followers know that's not the case, but you have other people just think this stuff just magically happens. Internet bills just magically get paid. Website hosting just magically get paid. Just magically gets paid. Constant Contact just magically gets paid every month. You know, this is a struggle. All right. Learn World has to get paid every month. Crowdcast has to get paid every month. I just paid New York Times today for the subscription. New York Times. I paid Washington Post. Okay. I got to pay National Geographic. I still have to pay National Geographic. All right. But I just paid New York Times this morning. because I have subscriptions to all these different news sources, that are paid news sources that I use on this show. You know, I got to get another subscription to Britannica because Britannica.com, because something, I don't know what happened to my subscription to Britannica, but it doesn't work. But so I got to get a subscription to Britannica as well. I need to do that today because I just saw a promotion like 30% off for like Labor Day weekend. So I need to take advantage of that. But when you go right here to Learn World, click right here to enroll. And I just paid Learn World some money. This is one of the 2 digital platforms that we use to teach the class. Okay. You click on enroll, enrolls you in the class, and we have bonus content that you can start watching right away. There's bonus content that you can start watching right away, and you can join us in the class on Thursday, 7 p.m. To 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Class number 1 starts up. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, all of that. Now, on Tuesday, September 13th, we have class number 1 from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968, starting up. Okay, and this class starts in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase and the Haitian Revolution. And we go through history chronologically to see what leads up to the Civil War. We look at the Reconstruction era, 1865, 1807, Jim Crow era, World War I, World War II, Great Migration, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power movement. Okay, to understand what happened to us after slavery ended, what were the laws and policies put in place to put us in the predicament we're in today, so we know where we need to go from here. Okay, now we have a online course bundle. You can register for both classes for $130 because they're regularly $130 each. This is a over $300 value because it's going to be bonus content that you get from me also. And if you've taken any of my online classes in the past, going back to 2017, you can email us at TheAHNShow at TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Email us through the website. You can do that also. Just click on Contact the African History Network. Email us and you'll get a 50% discount, okay, on the course bundle. All right, so very quickly here, if we look at the class here, and this is going to be Thursday, September 8th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If we look very quickly here at a brief overview of the class. Let's see here. Okay, let me pull up the PowerPoint presentation. You can use this information on children. I would say the content PG-13. It's not overly graphic. I don't do a lot of cursing, things like that. But this would totally change the way that you look at history. Okay. And we'll also look at the African influence on America as well, not just on Europe, but also America. So when we look at the Washington Monument, that's an African structure called a Tekken. It represents resurrection and it relates to the Asarian drama. It relates to the story of Aset Heru and Asar being resurrected. There are about 1,200 Tekkenu all throughout ancient Kemet. Today, there are less than a dozen. And we see the Tekkens have been taken to different places around the world. We see them, the Tekkenu, Tekkenu for plural, we see them in London, England, New York City, Paris, France. Ancient Egyptians called obelisks Tekkenu, and they were also used to tell the time in the past. Their pinnacles were basically covered in gold to reflect the sunlight. Historians say that obelisks represented immortality and eternity. Obelisks represented immortality and eternity. And I'm going to post a link here on the thread of the broadcast also, so you can register for the class as well. And we have it also here in the description of the broadcast also. So as soon as you register, you can start watching content. Let's see here. Okay, so their pinnacles were basically covered in gold to reflect the sunlight. Historians say the obelisks represented immortality and eternity, and their long structure helped connect the heavens and the earth. Their long structure helped connect the heavens and the earth. Now, currently, Cleopatra's Needle is the name given to 3 ancient Egyptian obelisks, one in New York City, one in London, England, and one in Paris, France. However, they do not all come from one Egyptian site. The obelisks in New York City and London, England, are carved out of red granite from the quarries of Aswan, a major source of stone for Egyptian antiquities. The 2 obelisks were commissioned by Nesubiti, or Pharaoh Thutmose III, for the Temple of the Sun in Heliopolis, near modern-day Cairo, with each weighing about 224 tons and 68 feet tall. This is a good article from face-to-faceafrica.com, Cleopatra's Needle, how 3 ancient Egyptian obelisks ended up in New York City, how 3 ancient Egyptian obelisks ended up in New York City, London, and Paris, France. Okay, so, and then we deal with the mythology of Asar, Aset, and Heru. We look at some other Neteru as well, some other deities also. Now, there are approximately 1,200 Tekenu built in Kemet in ancient times, but only about a dozen are found in Egypt today. Many of the Tekenu removed from Egypt are now in Istanbul, Turkey, London, England, Paris, France, Berlin, Germany, New York, Rome, Italy, Vatican City, and elsewhere throughout the world. The Tekenu are now called obelisks by their new owners, and few know their origin or that they symbolize the resurrection of the African king Asar. And Tony Browder talks about this in Egypt on the Potomac, page 17, Egypt on the Potomac. So we also deal with Freemasonry and the African influence on Freemasonry. The word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun. Mason means child of light and expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. The term child of light, or sons and daughters of light, SUNS, sons and daughters of light, was first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of Kemet, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So the concept of going to a institution of higher learning and getting your credentials in a set of degrees, bachelor's degree, master's degree, associate's degree, PhD, etc. That comes from ancient Kemet. That comes from the lodges, the mystery systems, and the concept of liberal arts colleges also comes from that as well. So we look at things like why is December 25th? Why is Christmas celebrated on December 25th? Because nowhere in the biblical text does it state that Yeshua or Jesus Christ was born on December 25th. Now, some of this information may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you disagree with it or don't like it does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. We'll look at some of the pre-Christian origins of Christmas, like Yule, and Yuletide carols sung by the choir, the Yuletide, which was celebrated in Scandinavia amongst the Nordic people, amongst the Norse, from December 21st through the end of January. That's where Yule comes from, and Yuletide carols, that's where that comes from, Scandinavia. Odin, the Germanic festival of the pagan deity of the deity Odin, which was a midwinter festival. The festival of Saturnalia, celebrated amongst the Romans from December 17th through December 25th. The festival of Mithra amongst the Persians, the sun deity Mithra. All this is related. So when we look at these crucified saviors, when we look at these deities, we see their festivals were celebrated on or around the winter solstice, which is around December 20th, December 21st, and they're around December 25th, also somewhere around December 25th, but around the winter solstice. Okay, so all this is connected. December 25th is connected to the winter solstice, and winter solstice marks the first day of spring, first day of winter. And sol, that prefix sol means sun. Solstice means sun stands still, because on December 21st, the sun moves into its lowest point in its annual journey. And on December 22nd, 23rd, 24th, the sun appears not to move. It says the sun stands still, or the sun was dead for 3 days. Then on December 25th, the sun, the sun of God, the Son of God, moves 1 degree northward, and each subsequent day after December 25th marks an additional amount of daylight, each additional day. So December 25th in ancient times was looked at as the birth of the Son of God, the sun, not the son, or the rebirth of the sun. Okay, this is dealing with astronomy. All right, so then we see astrotheology put into allegorical form, but then taught as literal history. And we see astrology influencing mythology. We see astrology and astronomy influencing mythology. So what is the winter solstice? The instant at which the sun reaches the point of maximum southerly declination on or about December 21st. A solstice which occurs when the position of the earth is at the perihelion, or when it is nearest the sun, but its north pole is inclined away from the sun. The north pole is inclined away from the sun, which brings about winter in the north. It occurs when there is winter in the northern hemisphere and summer in the southern hemisphere. Okay, this is the winter solstice. So, and this is the period of time we're going to go into in a few months here. Okay, summer's coming to an end. Summer ends around September 20th or 21st, when you have the autumnal equinox. Okay, and then you go into the winter solstice. All this deals with astronomy. Okay, so these are all things that we look at in this 8-week online class. And we look at ancient African civilizations. We look at the influence from ancient Kemet. We even look at things like the film Black Panther, because the film Black Panther relates to African history, African culture, African language, and spiritual systems. We know that the Panther deity Bast comes from Bastet, which was a neter in ancient Kemet, worshipped as early as the Second Dynasty, is around 2890 BCE. And the Panther deity was originally in the form of a lioness, but then later in the form of a cat. Okay, the head originally of a lioness, but later a cat. Bast or Bastet, ancient Egyptian goddess, worshipped in the form of a lioness and a cat. She was a deity of warfare in Lower Kemet. Okay, so we look at civilizations like Carthage as well, and Hannibal Barca and the Carthaginians, and the Punic Wars, and fighting against the Romans, and the Battle of Cannae 216 BC, and the battle in 219 BC where Hannibal crosses the Alps with the elephants. We look at the Battle of Zama 202 BC where Hannibal is defeated by the Romans. We know Carthage is destroyed in 146 BC by the Romans as well. And no, Africa was not named after a Roman general named Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. That's incorrect. Actually, he took his surname after he conquered the territory. He takes his surname after the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. So it was about 201 BC. And Africanus means belonging to Africa. He takes his surname after the area that he conquered, and the Afri refer to a Black African people in Algeria and Tunisia. And these were the Afri, and Tunisia used to be the area that was Carthage in northern Africa. Africa, basically in Latin, basically means land of the Afri. Ka is a Latin suffix denoting land. Africa basically means land of the Afri. We look at pages 14 and 15 of African People in European History by Dr. John Henrik Clarke. Dr. Clarke breaks this down in pages 14 and 15. Okay. So, and we'll talk, some about Nubia as well. Ancient Nubia. We'll look at different African civilizations briefly. We'll look at the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, and what the Moors take into Europe, and the science and mathematics and the alchemy, the chemistry, different things like this. Alchemy meaning they take the periodic tables. They take something called alchemy, which today we call chemistry, of chemet alchemy. And the Moors go on in 711 AD into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal. George G.M. James said the Moors were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery system in Stolen Legacy. Now, the word Moors derived from the Greek word moros, which literally means black or a very dark color. The Romans adopt this word and called them Mari, M-A-U-R-I, Mari. The Mari were a Northwest African people who were very dark-skinned. The Romans will refer to the region of Northwest Africa as Mauritania. Mauritania is Latin and means the land of the black-skinned people. You'll also hear the term Marish. If you read pages 527 and 187, the Golden Age of the Moor, they have that information there. Okay, so we go through and look at this history chronologically. We look at thousands of years of history. We talk about Tariq ibn Ziyad, and Tariq leading his army in 711 AD, fighting against the Vandals and the Visigoths. And then Tariq is going to he conquers Toledo and some other cities, and they're going to settle in southern Spain, which they call Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus. Okay, basically means to walk in the spiritual path or walk in the spiritual light. In the aftermath of these brilliant struggles, thousands of Moors flooded into the Iberian Peninsula. So eager were they to come that some are said to have floated over on tree trunks. Tariq himself, at the conclusion of his illustrious military career, retired to the distant east. We are informed to spread the teachings of Islam. We look at people like Saint Maurice, who became a patron saint to Germany as well. We'll deal with things like why are there Moorish heads on the national flags of Corsica and Sardinia. Corsica, a French island in the Mediterranean, Sardinia, an Italian island in the Mediterranean. We'll look at the three great West African kingdoms of Ghana, Songhai, and Mali. We'll talk about Mansa Musa, who's the richest man in the history of the world, who becomes emperor of the Mali Empire in 1312 AD, and who is similar to T'Challa in the Marvel comic universe, because T'Challa is the richest man in the Marvel comic universe as well. There was a good article from history.com, official website of the History Channel, that talks about the connection between the T'Challa and Mansa Musa. Okay, this 14th century African emperor remains the richest person in history. March 19th, 2018, Mansa Musa became ruler of the Mali Empire in 1312 AD, taking the throne after his predecessor Abu Bakr II, for whom he'd served as deputy, went missing on a voyage he took by sea to find the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. Mansa Musa's rule came at a time when European nations were struggling due to raging civil wars and a lack of resources, like gold and salt. Okay, so this article here, this 14th century African emperor remains the richest person in history. So this is the History Channel telling you that West Africa was flourishing when Europe was in disarray and dealing with plague and famine. In 1347, the Black Death hits, the bubonic plague. It hits and spreads from 1347 to 1400. Europe is dealing with civil war and strife and things like this. But West Africa, especially the Mali Empire, are flourishing at this time. So we'll look at Christopher Columbus. We have to deal with Christopher Columbus because Columbus helps to lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, and exploitation of indigenous people. And also because of Bartolome de las Casas, we're going to see the transatlantic slave trade expand with the Asiento de Negros of 1518, signed by King Charles V. Okay, now Columbus never comes to the land that we call the United States of America. The closest he comes here is Cuba, which is 90 miles away. But Father Bartolome de las Casas, Bishop Bartolome de las Casas, who traveled with Columbus on some of his voyages and kept a diary and turned his diary into books, because I read 2 of his books when I was in college. History of the Indies, or In Tears of the Indies, or something like that. Bartolome de las Casas estimates that Columbus was responsible for the murder of 12 million to 25 million indigenous people. Okay, so we'll go throughout history. We'll look at things like the doctrine of discovery of 1452. We'll look at papal bulls. What are papal bulls? We'll look at the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade in 1441, with Anton Gonzalez going into Mauritania, picking up 12 Africans as well, taking them back to Portugal. And then we go through and analyze and look at, the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, African slaves were first brought to the New World shortly after its discovery by Christopher Columbus. Legend has it that one slave was included in his original crew, and they could be found on Hispaniola, site of present-day Haiti, as early as 1501. Now we know the French are going to take over the western third of the island of Hispaniola in 1697. They take that over from the Spanish, and we're going to see these different European nations fighting one another over this quote unquote new world that they're discovering. The Spanish and the French and the British, the Dutch are fighting one another. We see the Portuguese set up the Elmina dungeon in 1482 in Ghana, but that's going to be taken over by the Dutch. So these European nations that started out as barbarians, started out as the Anglos, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Lombards, the Picts, the Alans, the Franks, the Vandals, and the Visigoths. They're going to go from barbarians to then kingdoms to then states, nations. And these nations continue to fight and kill one another. Okay. And then that culminates with World War I and World War II. These same nations are going to be fighting and killing one another in World War I and World War II. Okay. All right. So these are just a few of the things that we deal with in this 8-week online class: Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. So we deal with thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. I'm going to post a link here, and you can register for the class right now. As soon as you register, this bonus content, you can start watching. And I did a class today because we have a course that's wrapping up. We have like one more session left. So as soon as you register, you can watch the class we did today also. But class number 1 starts up Thursday, September 8th, 2022. It's going to be 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. So you don't have to be in class. You don't have to be in class live. You can see me. I can't see you. There is a text chat, so you can ask questions also. Okay. And then we have the bundle pack as well. All the information is at TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So you can register for the class now. And this also helps support the African History Network as well. Okay, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And, I almost forgot. Okay, so we have a new bundle pack also. And we're going to have it on the homepage of our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's a 15 DVD bundle pack. It's this one right here. You can order it right now. We have them shipping out this week. African History Awakens the African Mind, 15 DVD bundle pack. These are 15 of my lectures. This one right here. Hold on. And we'll have this on the homepage of, it's in our online store, but we'll have this on the homepage as well. But you can order it right now. We'll post a link here. African History Awakens the African Mind is 15 DVD bundle pack. of my lectures. African History Awakens the African Mind from Mental Death. African History Awakens the African Mind from Mental Death. Here's some of the lectures that you get. You get my lecture dealing with the film Black Panther Analysis, African Culture, History, and Afrofuturism. You get Breaking the Chains, Why We Celebrate Black History Month. Malcolm X 50 years later. Malcolm X 50 years later. Why he's still relevant. And let me pull this up right here because I'm gonna post this link now. 15. One. Yeah, right here. Okay. Okay, yeah, this is the new bundle. And it has some of my new lectures in it also. So we just posted that link as well. The distortion of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the revolutionary, will not be televised on the television. Lessons from the film Black Panther, economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense. So I talk about how do we take the enthusiasm from the film Black Panther, how do we take some of the themes that we see in the film Black Panther and use it for economic empowerment and political empowerment. 6 principles of political self-defense, how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. There are actually 2 lectures on this in this presentation here. One I did in Atlanta at the Black Homeschooling Conference, and one I did at the State of Black America in Illinois. Okay, so the 2 presentations on here. The 13 forms of wealth, keys to entrepreneurship and economic empowerment. Ancient Kemet, the winter solstice, and the history of Christmas. So we deal with the origins of Christmas and the pre-Christian origins of Christmas. The First Americans were Africans, documented evidence is a double lecture I did with Dr. David Imhotep, and he deals with some of his newer research dealing with his book, The First Americans were Africans, documented evidence. Redistributing the pain, how African Americans fought back with economic boycotts. Redistributing the pain, how African Americans fought back with economic boycotts. So this is actually a 4-hour lecture that I did, and about 3 or 4 hours, and it deals with historical examples of us using different types of economic withdrawal strategies to fight back against white supremacy. Redistributing the pain. Now, the term redistributing the pain is not violent. It comes from Dr. King's last speech, April 3rd, 1968, I've been to the mountaintop, where he says we have to find a way to redistribute the pain. And up until now, only the sanitation workers have been feeling the pain. And he talks about engaging in economic withdrawal strategies, okay, and redistributing the pain through targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies. The light of ancient Egypt awakens the African mind to economic empowerment. Ancient Africans in America before Native Americans, Columbus, or slavery. So that deals with some recent archaeological discoveries and dealing with the African presence in the Americas going back tens of thousands of years ago, even before Columbus. Great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. That's a 4-hour presentation. A Black Panther analysis for children. Now, this is a presentation I did at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in May of 2018. Now, speaking to about 60 5th through 12th graders and their teachers. And I'm going through breaking down the film Black Panther, and I'm showing how teachers can use this film to teach African history and African American history to our children through different themes, through different elements that we see in the film Black Panther. A Black Panther analysis for children, African culture and history. And then lastly, rounding out this bundle pack, my presentation, African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. Okay. So it's a 15 DVD bundle pack, brand new offering from the African History Network. We'll post a link. It's on sale $100. We have these shipping out this week. We'll post a link here. It's also available at TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com. All right, so we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, you focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever.